They say a 911 call is the most intimate sound of terror you will ever hear. Not a scream in the night, not the creak of a floorboard in an abandoned house, but the voice of a human being, reaching out in their final, desperate attempt to be saved. In America, millions of calls flood into 911 centers every single year. Some are mundane, car crashes, fires, noise complaints. But hidden among them are calls that curdle the blood of even the most seasoned dispatchers. Calls where the voice on the line doesn't just speak, it trembles. It whispers. It breaks. And then, sometimes, it goes silent forever. Tonight, you and I are going to step into the darkness together. Because there are calls where the last words of a victim are not just heard by a dispatcher, but captured forever, echoing like a ghost across time. This is the 911 call that captured the last words of a victim. Before we dive in, I want you to do something for me. Turn off the lights. Put the phone down. Let your room grow still. And ask yourself this question: if you had only 30 seconds left to speak, what would your last words be? Because the voices you're about to hear, they didn't know they were leaving their final message. They just knew someone, anyone, had to pick up the phone. Now, here's the truth that most people don't realize: dispatchers in the US are trained to remain calm at all costs. They can hear someone's worst nightmare unfolding, gunshots, screams, breaking glass, and yet they must sound composed, almost robotic. But even dispatchers, even they have moments that haunt them forever. Cases that make them quit the job. Calls that play on repeat in their dreams. And in tonight's stories, you're going to understand why. Because the calls we're covering don't end with police arriving in time. They don't end with a rescue. They end with silence. They end with a voice vanishing. Think about this: somewhere right now, at this very moment, someone is dialing 911. Maybe they're hiding in a closet while an intruder creeps closer. Maybe they're in a car sinking under black water. Maybe they're standing in the woods, staring at something with eyes too tall to belong to a man. The dispatcher will answer with the same words they always do: 911, what's your emergency? But sometimes the only reply is a broken whisper. Sometimes, it's the last thing that person ever says. And if you think these are just stories, let me remind you, every account tonight is rooted in real calls. Some documented, some whispered about in dispatch centers, others buried under case files never released to the public. I've chosen 3 of the most haunting. 3 that stand out because they don't just describe horror, they trap horror in a recording. And once you hear them, you can never unhear them. But before we go there, let me set the stage deeper. In America, 911 calls are not just tools for rescue. They are time capsules of fear. When someone calls in, you hear the rawest part of the human soul, stripped of politeness, stripped of pride, stripped of anything but survival. And for many listeners, including dispatchers themselves, these recordings aren't just scary, they're traumatizing. There are operators who last only weeks before quitting the job. Others, years later, still break into tears if you ask them about the call that changed everything. Why? Because hearing someone's last words is not like watching a horror movie. There's no soundtrack, no actors, no director. It's real, it's messy. It's raw humanity, slipping away in real time. And if you're brave enough to keep listening tonight, you'll feel a piece of that weight for yourself. But I want to warn you, once you imagine these calls, you won't be able to unimagine them. You'll lie in bed later, in the quiet, and your mind will replay the details. The voice, the silence, the unanswered question: what happened after the line went dead? If you're still here, then you're ready. So let's begin with the first story. The Jennings family call. It was a Sunday night in October of 2003. The kind of night where the suburbs seemed unusually still, streets dark except for porch lights, blinds drawn, no sound except the occasional bark of a dog echoing from somewhere down the block. At 9:47 p.m., a dispatcher at the Travis County 911 Center in Texas picked up an incoming call. On the line was a woman. Her voice was sharp, trembling, but still carrying the instinctive authority of a mother trying to stay strong. Her name was Linda Jennings. Dispatcher, 911, what's your emergency? Linda, someone's in my house. I don't know who they are, but they're in the hallway. Please, my kids are upstairs. The dispatcher immediately began the standard protocol, keeping Linda calm, asking questions, signaling units to respond. But within seconds of listening, even the dispatcher noted something unusual in the log later written. Linda wasn't screaming. She wasn't breaking down. She was whispering, calculated, like she knew the danger was listening too. As the line stayed open, the microphone captured the faint creak of floorboards in the background. The intruder was moving inside the Jennings two-story home. Dispatcher, ma'am, can you get to a secure room? Lock a door if possible. Linda, I'm in the kitchen. The kids are upstairs, please, just tell them to hurry. And then, a pause. A sound that was so faint, the dispatcher had to replay it later multiple times in the recording. A click, like someone slowly pushing open a door. Linda's breath hitched. Linda, they're here. Now, here's where the call becomes legendary among dispatchers. Because the average home invasion call ends in one of two ways. The suspect flees when sirens approach. The caller barricades long enough for police to arrive. But what happened that night didn't follow either pattern. The dispatcher tried to keep Linda talking, tried to keep her calm. Dispatcher, ma'am, stay on the line. Officers are on the way. Can you hide? There's a shuffle of movement. The sound of something metallic scraping. Linda whispered again, but softer this time, almost like she wasn't speaking to the dispatcher anymore. Linda, please don't hurt them. The dispatcher repeated questions, louder now, desperate. But Linda's words, her last clear words, still echo in dispatch archives. Linda, my babies. And then, silence. The line stayed open for 6 more minutes. Nothing but faint static, distant movement, and once, a child's voice, muffled, calling, Mom. By the time units arrived at the Jennings home, the house was empty. No signs of forced entry. No overturned furniture. No broken glass. Just an abandoned phone lying on the kitchen counter, still connected to 911. The family of 4, Linda, her husband Mark, and their 2 children Emily and Ryan, were never seen again. Investigators combed through every detail. No neighbors reported anything unusual. No cars were seen leaving the driveway. No struggle, no bodies, no blood. It was as if the Jennings family had stepped out of existence in the middle of their own home. The only evidence was that phone call. For years, that recording circulated among dispatchers as a cautionary tale. Some swore they could hear additional sounds in the background if you listened closely with headphones. A low hum, like chanting. Others claimed there was a third voice faintly speaking, one that wasn't Linda, wasn't her children, and didn't belong to any officer. One forensic audio analyst, never officially part of the case but intrigued by rumors, slowed the recording to 50. In the silence following Linda's last words, he claimed you could hear a man's voice whispering something indecipherable, followed by 3 knocks. But here's the strangest part, and this is why the Jennings case remains a whispered legend even now. The house itself had history. Before the Jennings moved in, it stood empty for years. Neighbors said families never stayed long, strange activity, odd noises, doors that locked themselves. A man who lived 2 houses down once claimed he saw a figure staring out of the upstairs bedroom window long before the Jennings ever bought the property. A figure, when the house was supposed to be vacant. Police reports from the 1980s mentioned the same address in connection with disturbances, though none ever led to arrests. So when Linda's call ended in silence, some investigators began wondering, was this really a home invasion? Or had the Jennings encountered something else entirely that night? To this day, no trace of the family has been found. Bank accounts untouched. Social security numbers inactive. No sightings. The house changed owners 3 times since then, but tenants never stay. Some report hearing footsteps upstairs when no one is home. One family even said they found a child's toy car rolling across the hallway at night, when they didn't even have kids. The call is still stored in archives, though rarely played in full. Dispatchers who've heard it describe the same thing. The last words are the worst part. Because when Linda said, "My babies," you could hear not just fear, but acceptance. She knew. She understood she wasn't getting out. And the silence that followed wasn't just the end of a call. It was the end of a family. So if you ever find yourself awake in the dead of night, standing in the dark kitchen of your own home, phone in hand, remember Linda Jennings. Remember how she whispered into the receiver, begging the line to save her children. And remember this, sometimes, 911 doesn't capture a rescue. Sometimes, it captures a farewell. Story 2, The Motel Motel Guest's last words. Every town in America has one of those places. The kind of roadside motel you only stop at when you're too tired to keep driving. Faded neon signs, buzzing like trapped flies. Rust-colored carpet in the rooms. Cigarette burns on the nightstands. In August of 2011, off a stretch of rural highway in Arizona, that place was the Desert Sun Motel. And at 2:16 a.m., the front desk clerk dialed 911. But the strange thing, the phone call didn't come from him. It came from one of the guests. A man named Daniel Porter. The recording begins with a voice already shaking, already unsteady. "Daniel, please send someone. He's outside my door. He's been standing there for hours, he won't leave." The dispatcher immediately asked the standard questions. "Where are you? What's happening? Do you know this person?" But Daniel kept repeating the same words. "He's been here all night. He doesn't move. He just stands there." Later, police pieced together what little security footage they had from the motel. The hallway outside Daniel's room showed a figure. Tall, motionless, directly facing his door. The footage was grainy, the lens fogged with dust, but the timestamp confirmed it. The man stood there, completely still, for at least 2 hours before the call was made. And that's when the dispatcher asked the critical question. "Dispatcher, sir, can you describe him?" There's a pause on the line. Then Daniel's voice, cracked, fearful, almost childlike, answers, "Daniel, he doesn't have a face." The dispatcher, thinking he was delirious or hallucinating, tried to ground him. Asked if he had been drinking. Asked if it was possible the man was wearing a mask. But Daniel insisted. "Daniel, I opened the blinds once, just to look." His head turned toward me. "There's nothing there. Just skin." For the next 5 minutes, the call captures only Daniel's uneven breathing and the faint hum of the motel's neon sign outside. Then, in the background, a noise. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. "Daniel, he knows I'm on the phone." The dispatcher tried to keep him calm, assured him units were on the way. But the police station was nearly 30 minutes from the motel, out on that forgotten stretch of desert road. "Dispatcher, sir, stay in your room. Do not open the door." "Daniel, he's coming in." The sound that followed chilled every dispatcher who later reviewed the recording, the metallic click of a motel door unlocking. Daniel screamed. The phone clattered to the floor. And over the next 30 seconds, the call captured muffled chaos, shuffling, a crash like a lamp falling, Daniel begging, "No, no," before silence. The line remained open for another 7 minutes, broadcasting nothing but static and the occasional hiss of desert wine through the motel's broken window frame. By the time deputies arrived, Daniel Porter was gone. The room looked disturbed, furniture overturned, blood on the wall near the nightstand, but no body, no sign of where he had gone. And the strangest detail: the door to his motel room was still locked from the inside. The Desert Sun Motel was already whispered about by locals. Travelers complained of waking up to the sound of knocking with no one there. Staff joked about a man in the hallway scaring guests. But none of it seemed serious, until the recording of Daniel Porter's last words. The desk clerk later admitted he had also seen the man that night. He described him exactly the same way, tall, still, watching the doors. Like his face wasn't finished. But when deputies asked why he hadn't called police earlier, the clerk answered something even stranger. "I thought he was a guest, until I realized he never checked in." The Desert Sun shut down in 2015. Its sign was torn down, the rooms boarded up. But some travelers still stopped near the ruins to take photos, daring each other to walk the empty hallways. One group of urban explorers in 2019 claimed they recorded knocking sounds from inside one of the locked rooms. Another swore their camera caught a figure standing at the end of the corridor, tall, unmoving, blurred like bad VHS static. But no one has ever explained what happened to Daniel Porter. No body, no footprints, no trail. Only a call where his last words were, simply, "Daniel, he's coming in." So remember this: the next time you stop at one of those roadside motels, exhausted from the highway, room key in hand, pay attention to the hallway. Because sometimes, the man standing outside your door isn't waiting for a room. Sometimes, he's waiting for you. The college girls call college is supposed to be the safest, most exciting time of your life. Late night study sessions, dorm room gossip, coffee-fueled mornings before exams. But in October of 2017, at a small Midwestern university, one freshman's night turned into a story that's still whispered about on campus today. Her name was Emily Carter, 19 years old, bright, shy, and still adjusting to being far from home. And at 3:12 a.m., Emily dialed 911. Her voice was soft at first, almost embarrassed. "Emile, hi, I think someone's in my dorm." The dispatcher asked the usual, was she alone? Did she live in a shared space? Could it be a roommate returning late? Emily shook her head audibly. You could hear the faint swish of her hair against the phone. "Emily, no. My roommate's gone for the weekend. And the steps, they're not hers. She doesn't walk like that." That sentence chilled the dispatcher. She doesn't walk like that. Emily had noticed something specific, something intimate, about whoever was inside. The footsteps on the recording, you can hear it too. Faint, deliberate footsteps. Not hurried, not random, just slow, steady pacing, up and down the hallway of her dorm floor. The dispatcher asked if she could see the intruder. Emily whispered she was hiding inside her closet, knees tucked to her chest. "Emily, he keeps stopping in front of my door. Like he's listening. But, how does he know which one is mine?" 2 minutes into the call, it happens. 3 knocks. Not the casual kind a friend makes. Not the pounding of someone demanding entry. But slow. Hollow, almost playful. Emily muffled a cry with her hand. "Dispatcher, stay quiet. Police are on their way." But Emily's reply still haunts dispatchers who replayed the tape later. "Emily, he doesn't want in. He already is." The closet. At this point, the sound on the call changes. The creak of a door hinge. The unmistakable groan of wood as Emily's dorm room door opened. She whispered, barely audible, "He's here." The dispatcher urged her not to hang up, to stay calm, to keep the line open. But all they could hear was Emily's uneven breathing inside the closet. The rustle of her shifting. The faint sound of someone moving inside the room. And then, silence. For nearly 30 seconds, the recording captured nothing but dead air. Until a new sound came. Not Emily's voice. A man's. A whisper. Right into the phone. Unknown male voice, "Found you." There's a high-pitched scream, the crash of the phone falling, and the call disconnects. Police arrived 11 minutes later. Emily Carter was gone. Her closet door was open, her belongings scattered, but there was no sign of forced entry. The hallway cameras, cheap, decades old, were too blurry to identify anyone. They showed a tall figure walking the hallway, yes, but the tape cuts out at the exact moment he would have passed Emily's door. The university tried to keep it quiet. Press statements called it a student disappearance. But the recording was leaked within weeks, and the chilling phrase, "found you," burned itself into internet legend. Emily's parents pushed for answers, but none ever came. Her body was never found. Her dorm room was sealed, then reassigned the following semester to new students. But here's where the story grows darker, because the students who moved into that same room began reporting strange things. Knocking at odd hours. The feeling of being watched while they slept. And, in one case, a girl claimed she woke up to hear her own closet door creaking open, when no one else was inside. Today, if you walk the halls of that university's old dorms, students will warn you about one rule: never ignore the knocks. Some claim they've heard whispering voices on the floor late at night, repeating the same words Emily's caller spoke, "Found you." And every year, near the anniversary of her disappearance, someone reports hearing footsteps pacing the hallway at exactly 3:12 a.m., the same time Emily made her call. The victim's last words. Emily Carter's case remains open. Police still list her as missing, but most students believe she's gone. Taken. And the only thing that remains is her last terrified whisper, caught forever on that tape, "Emily, he's here." So remember this: sometimes, the scariest sounds in the world aren't screams, or cries for help. Sometimes, the scariest sound is the whisper of someone else on the line, someone who isn't supposed to be there. And if you ever hear footsteps outside your door in the dead of night, pray you don't hear the words that Emily Carter did. Because if you do, it means your story is about to end. You've just heard 3 calls, 3 final moments, 3 voices that should have lived on in laughter, in life, in love. But instead, they live on only in recordings. And maybe that's the scariest part of all, not the footsteps, not the whispers, not even the screams, but the silence that follows. The silence when a victim's last words hang in the air, and then vanish forever. Because for every 911 call we know, there are others we never hear. Calls cut off. Calls buried in evidence files. Calls that never connected in time. And behind each one is a story, a person, who never got to finish their sentence. So tonight, ask yourself, what if your last words were captured on tape? What if your voice was the next whisper replayed on a late-night YouTube video like this one? Would you be remembered, or forgotten in the static? If you felt that chill run down your spine, don't run from it. Lean in. That fear, that fascination, it means you belong here, with us. Because this is just the beginning. The calls, the disappearances, the stories that make America's nights sleepless, we're only scratching the surface. So before you turn off the lights tonight, hit subscribe. Hit the bell icon, because when the next voice speaks from the darkness, you'll want to hear it first. And remember, the next 911 call could be anyone's. It could even